And Vivien answered, smiling, as in wrath, "Have I not sworn I am not trusted? Good. Well, hide it, hide it. I shall find it out, and being found, take heed of Vivien, a woman, and not trusted. Doubtless, I might feel some sudden turn of anger, born of your misfaith, and your fine epithet is accurate too, for this full love of mine, without the full heart back, may merit well your term of overstrained, so used as I. My daily wonder is I love it all. And as to woman's jealousy, oh, why not? Oh, to what end except a jealous one? And one to make me jealous, if I love, was this fair charm invented by yourself. I well believe that all about this world ye cage a buxom captive here and there, closed in the four walls of a hollow tower, from which is no escape for evermore. Then the great master merrily answered her, "Full many a love in loving youth was mine. I needed then no charm to keep them mine, but youth and love, and that full heart of yours, whereof ye prattle, may now assure you mine. So live uncharmed, for those who wrought it first. The wrist is parted from the hand that waved, the feet unmortized from the ankle bones, who paced ages back. But will ye hear the legend as in guerdon for your rhyme? There lived a king in most eastern East, less old than I, yet older for my blood, hath earnest in it of far springs to be, a tawny pirate anchored in his port, whose bark had plundered 20 nameless isles. In passing one at the high peeps of dawn, he saw 2 cities and 1,000 boats, all fighting for a woman on the sea, and pushing his black craft among them all. He lightly scattered theirs and brought her off, with loss of half his people, arrow slain, a maid so smooth, so white, so wonderful. They said a light came from her when she moved, and since the pirate would not yield her up, the king impaled him for his piracy, then made her queen. But those isle-nurtured eyes waged such unwilling, though successful war on all the youths. They sickened, councils thinned, and armies waned, for magnet-like she drew the rustiest iron of old fighters' hearts, and beasts themselves would worship. Camels knelt unbidden, and brutes of mountain back, that carry kings and castles, bowed black knees of homage, ringing with their serpent hands, to make her smile her golden ankle bells. What wonder, being jealous, that he sent his horns of proclamation out through all the 100 under kingdoms that he swayed, to find a wizard who might teach the king some charm, which being wrought upon the queen, might keep her all his own. To such a one he promised more than ever king has given, a league of mountain full of golden mines, a province with 100 miles of coast, a place and a princess, all for him. But on all those who tried and failed, the king pronounced a dismal sentence, meaning by it to keep the list low, and pretenders back are like a king not to be trifled with. Their heads should molder on the city gates, and many tried and failed, because the charm of nature in her overbore their own. And many a wizard, brow bleached on the walls, and many weeks, a troop of carrion crows, hung like a cloud above the gateway towers. And Vivien, breaking in upon him, said, I sit and gather honey, yet methinks thy tongue has tripped a little. Ask thyself. The lady never made unwilling war. With those fine eyes she had her pleasure in it, and made her good man jealous with good cause. And lived there neither dame nor damsel then, wroth at a lover's lost, were all as tame, I mean as noble, as the queen was fair. Not one to flirt a venom at her eyes, or pinch a murderous dust into her drink, or make her paler with a poisoned rose. Well, those were not our days, but did they find a wizard, tell me, was he like to thee? She ceased and made her lithe arm round his neck, tighten, and then drew back, and let her eyes speak for her, glowing on him like a bride's, on her new lord, her own, the first of men. He answered laughing, nay, not like to me. At last they found his forgers for charms, a little glassy-headed, hairless man, who lived alone in great wild on grass, read but one book, and ever reading grew, so grated down and filed away with thought. So lean his eyes were monstrous, while the skin clung but to crate and basket, ribs and spine. And since he kept his mind on one sole aim, nor ever touched fierce wine, nor tasted flesh, nor owned a sensual wish, to him the wall that sunders ghost and shadow casting men became a crystal, and he saw them through it, and heard their voices talk behind the wall, and learnt their elemental secrets, powers and forces, often o'er the sun's bright eye, drew the vast eyelid of an inky cloud, and lashed it at the base with slanting storm, or in the noon of mist and driving rain, when the lake whitened and the pinewood roared, and the cairned mountain was a shadow, sunned the world to peace again. Here was the man, and so by force they dragged him to the king. And then he taught the king to charm the queen in such wise that no man could see her more, nor saw she save the king, who wrought the charm, coming and going, and she lay as dead, and lost all use of life. But when the king made proffer of the league of golden mines, the providence with 100 miles of coast, the palace and the princess, that old man went back to his old wild and lived on grass, and vanished, and his book came down to me. And Vivien answered, smiling saucily, Ye have the book, the charm is written in it. Good, take my counsel. Let me know it at once, for keep it like a puzzle chest in chest, with each chest locked and padlocked 30-fold, and whelm all this beneath as vast a mound, as after furious battle turfs the slain, on some wild down above the windy deep, I yet should strike upon a sudden means to dig, pick, open, find, and read the charm. Then, if I tried it, who should blame me then? And smiling as a master smiles at one that is not of his school, nor any school, but that where blind and naked ignorance delivers brawling judgments unashamed, on all things all day long, he answered her, Thou read the book, my pretty Vivien. O, it is but 20 pages long, but every page having an ample marge, and every marge enclosing in the midst a square of text that looks like a little blot, the text no larger than the limbs of fleas, and every square of text an awful charm, writ in a language that has long gone by, so long that the mountains have arisen since, with cities on their flanks. Thou read the book, an ever margin scribbled, crossed, and crammed with comet densest condensation, hard to mind and eye, but the long sleepless nights of my long life have made it easy to me, and none can read the text, not even I, and none can read the comment but myself, and in the comment did I find the charm. Oh, the results are simple. A mere child might use it to the harm of anyone, and never could undo it. Ask no more. For though you should not prove it upon me, but keep that oath ye swear, ye might, perchance, essay it on some one of the Table Round, and all because ye dream they babble of you. And remember that this, we're hinting at something that existed starting with the jinn, when there weren't humans. And Vivien, drowning in true anger, said, "What dare the full-fed liars say of me? They ride abroad, redressing human wrongs. They sit with knife and meat, and wine and horn. They bound to holy vows of chastity. Were I not woman, I could tell a tale. But you are man, will can understand the shame that cannot be explained. For shame, not one of all the drove should touch me, swine." Then answered Merlin, careless of her words, "You breathe but accusation vast and vague, spleen-born, I think, and proofless. If ye know, set up the charge ye know, to stand or fall." And Vivien answered, frowning wrathfully, "O what say ye to Sir Valence, him whose kinsman left him watcher o'er his wife, and two fair babes, and went to distant lands? Was 1 year gone, and on returning found not one, not two, but three. There lay the reckling, one but 1 hour old. And what said the happy sire? A 7 months' babe had been a truer gift. Those 12 sweet moons confused his fatherhood." Then answered Merlin, "Nay, I know the tale. Sir Valence wedded with an outland dame. Some cause had kept him sundered from his wife. 1 child they had had. It lived with her, she died. His kinsman, travelling on his own affair, was charged by Valence to bring home the child. He brought, not found it, therefore take the truth." "O said Vivien, "over true a tale. What say ye then to sweet Sagramore, that ardent man, to pluck the flower in season? So says the song. I trow it is no treason. O master, shall we call him over quick, to crop his own sweet rose before the hour?" And Merlin answered, "Over quick art thou, to catch a lowly plume fallen from the wing of that foul bird of rapine, whose whole prey is man's good name. He never wronged his bride. I know the tale." An angry gust of wind puffed out his torch from among the myriad roomed and many corridored complexities of Arthur's palace. Then he found a door, and, darkling, felt the sculptured ornament that, wreathen round it, made it seem his own, and wearied out, made for the couch, and slept. A stainless man beside a stainless maid, and either slept, nor knew of other there, till the high dawn, piercing the royal rose, in Arthur's casement glimmered chastely down, blushing upon them blushing, and at once he rose without a word and parted from her. But when the thing was blazed about the court, the brute world howling forced them into bonds, and as it chanced, they were happy, being pure. "O said Vivien, that were likely too. What say ye then to fair Sir Percival, and of the horrid foulness that he wrought? The saintly youth, the spotless Lamb of Christ, are some black wether of Saint Satan's fold. What, in the precincts of the chapel yard, among the nightly brasses of the graves, and by the cold jackets of the dead? And Merlin answered carelessly of her charge, a sober man is Percival, and pure, but once in life was flustered with new wine, then paced for coolness in the chapel yard, where one of Satan's shepherdesses caught, and meant to stamp him with her master's mark. And that he sinned is not believable, for look upon his face. But if he sinned, the sin that practice burns into the blood, and not the one dark hour which brings remorse, will brand us after of whose fold we be, or else were he the holy king whose hymns are chanted in the minster, worse than all. But is your spleen frothed out, or have ye more? And Vivien answered, frowning yet in wrath, what say ye to Sir Launcelot, friend, traitor or true, that commerce with the queen, I ask you, is it clamoured by the child, or whispered in the corner? Do ye know it? To which he answered sadly, Yea, I know it. Sir Launcelot went, ambassador at first, to fetch her, and she watched him from her walls. A rumour runs, so she took him for the king. So fixed her fancy on him, let them be. But have ye no one word of loyal praise for Arthur, blameless king and stainless man? She answered with a low and chuckling laugh, Man, is he man at all who knows and winks? Sees what his fair bride is and does and winks? By which the good king means to bind himself, and binds himself and all the table round, to all the foulness that they work. Myself could call him, were it not for womanhood, the pretty, popular, 'cause such manhood earns, could call him the main cause of all their crime. Yet, were he not crowned king, coward and fool, then Merlin to his own heart loathing said, O true and tender, O my liege and king, O selfless man, and stainless gentleman, who wouldst against thine own eye witness fain, have all men true and leal, all women pure, how in the mouths of base interpreters, from over-fineness not intelligible, to things with every sense as false and foul as the poached filth that floods the middle street, is thy white blamelessness accounted blame. But Vivien, deeming Merlin overborne, by instance recommenced, and let her tongue rage like a fire among the noblest names, polluting and imputing her whole self, defaming and defacing, till she left not even Launcelot brave, nor Galahad clean. Her words had issue other than she willed. He dragged his eyebrow bushes down, and made a snowy penthouse for his hollow eyes, and muttered in himself, Tell her the charm. So if she had it, would she rail on me, to snare the next? And if she have it not, so will she rail. What did the wanton say? Not mount as high. We scarce can sink as low. For men, at most, differ as heaven and earth, but women, worst and best, as heaven and hell. I know the table round, my friends of old, all brave and many generous, and some chaste. She cloaks the scar of some repulse with lies. I well believe she tempted them and failed, being so bitter for fine plots may fail. Though Harlots paint their talk as well as face, with colors of the heart that are not theirs. I will not let her know. 9 tides of times. Face falterer and backbiter are the same. And they, sweet soul, that most impute a crime, are pronest to it, and impute themselves, wanting the mental range, our low desire. Not to feel lowest makes them level all. Yea, they would pare the mountain to the plain, to leave an equal baseness. And in this are harlots like the crowd, that if they find some stain or blemish in a name of note, not grieving that their greatest are so small, inflate themselves with some insane delight, and judge all nature from her feet of clay, without the will to lift their eyes and see. Our godlike head, crowned with spiritual fire, and touching other worlds, I am weary of her. Now, I would not say that any are godlike, but godly. He spoke in words, part heard, in whispers part, half suffocated in the hoary fell, and many wintered fleece of throat and chin. But Vivien, gathering somewhat of his mood, and hearing harlot, muttered twice or thrice, let from her session on his lap, and stood stiff as a viper frozen. Loathsome sight, how from the rosy lips of life and love flashed the bare grinning skeleton of death. White was her cheek, sharp breaths of anger puffed her fairy nostril out, her hand half clenched, went faltering sideways, downward to her belt, and feeling, had she found a dagger there, for in a wink the false love turns to hate. She would have stabbed him, but found it not. His eye was calm, and suddenly she took to bitter weeping like a beaten child, a long, long weeping, not consolable. Then her false voice made way, broken with sobs. Oh, crueler than was ever told in tale, or sung in song. Oh, lavished, oh vainly lavished love, oh cruel, there was nothing wild or strange, or seeming shameful for what shame in love. So love be true, and not as yours is, nothing, poor Vivien, had not done to win his trust, who called her what he called her, all her crime, all the wish to prove him wholly hers. She mused a little, and then clapped her hands together with a wailing shriek, and said, stabbed through the heart's affections to the heart, seethed like the kid in its own mother's milk. Apparently a ritual to melk cows, according to the Bible. Killed with a word worse than a life of blows. I thought that he was gentle, being great. O God, that I had loved a smaller man. I should have found in him a greater heart. O I, that flattering my true passion saw, the knights, the court, the king, dark in your light, who love to make men darker than they are, because of that high pleasure which I had, to seat you sole upon my pedestal of worship I am answered, and henceforth the course of life that seems so flowery to me, with you for guide and master, only you, becomes the sea cliff pathway, broken short, and ending in a ruin, nothing left, but into some low cave to crawl, and there, if the wolves spare me, keep my life away, killed with unutterable kindness. She paused, she turned away, she hung her head, the snake of gold slid from her hair, the braid slipped and uncouth itself, she wept afresh, and the dark wood grew darker toward the storm, in silence, while his anger slowly died within him, till he let his wisdom go for ease of heart, and half believed her true, called her to shelter in the hollow oak, come from the storm, and having no reply, gazed at the heaving shoulder and the face, hand hidden as for utmost grief or shame, then thrice essayed by tenderest touching terms to sleek her ruffled peace of mind in vain. At last she let herself be conquered by him, and as the cageling newly flown returns, the seeming injured, simple-hearted thing came to her old perch back and settled there, while she sat, half falling from his knees, half nestled at his heart, and since he saw the slow tear creep from her closed eyelid yet, about her, more in kindness than in love, the gentle wizard cast a shielding arm, but she dislinked herself at once and rose, her arms upon her breast across, and stood, a virtuous gentlewoman deeply wronged, upright and flushed before him. Then she said, "There must now be no passages of love betwixt us twain henceforth evermore, since if I be what I am grossly called, what should be granted which your own gross heart would reckon worth the taking? I will go, in truth, but one thing now, better have died thrice than have axed it once, could make me stay. That proof of trust, so often ask in vain, how justly, after that vile term of yours, I find with grief, I might believe you then, who knows, once more, lo, what was once to me, mere matter of the fancy, now hath grown, a vast necessity of heart and life. Farewell, think gently of me, for I fear my fate or folly, passing gare youth. For one so old must be to love thee still. But ere I leave thee, let me swear once more, that if I schemed against thy peace in this, may yon just heaven that darkness over me send, one flash, that missing all things else, may make my scheming brain a cinder if I lie. Scarce had she ceased, when out of heaven a bolt, for now the storm was close above them struck, furrowing a giant oak, and javelling, with darted spikes, and splinters of the wood, the dark earth round. He raised his eyes and saw the tree that shone white-listed through the gloom, but Vivien, fearing heaven, had heard her oath, and dazzled by the livid, flickering fork, and deafened with the stammering cracks and claps that followed, flying back and crying out, "O Merlin, though you do not love me, yet save me," clung to him and hugged him close, and called him dear protector in her fright, nor yet forgot her practice in her fright, but wrought upon his mood and hugged him close. The pale blood of the wizard at her touch took gayer colors like an opal warmed. She blamed herself for telling hearsay tales. She shook from fear, and for her fault she wept a petulancy. She called him lord and liege, her seer, her bard, her silver star of eve, her god, her Merlin, the one passionate love of her whole life, and ever overhead bellowed the tempest, and the rotten branch snapped in the rushing of the river rain. Above them, and in change of glare and gloom, her eye and neck glittering went and came. Now till the storm, its burst of passion spent, moaning and calling out of other lands, had left the ravaged woodland yet once more to peace, and what should not have had been, for Merlin, overtalked and overworn, had yielded, told her all the charm, and slept. Then, in one moment, she put forth the charm of woven paces and of waving hands, and in the hollow oak he lay as dead, and lost to life and use and name and fame, then crying, "I have made his glory mine," and shrieking out, "O fool!" The harlot leapt adown the forest, and the thicket closed behind her, and the forest echoed, "Fool." Now, one thing obvious is that people don't need to separate just because they're like, "Oh, I realize you're not perfect now." Yeah? You didn't figure that out in the first place? But yeah, don't It should be about sharing. Husband and wife or whatever should be about sharing and accomplishing something together.